you side by side, sis. Hold on. All right, let's see. There we go.
Hello, how are
How
you?
are you? Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I'm so glad that we finally were able to catch up. How was your trip?
Oh my gosh, it was so fulfilling and it taught me a lot about art and just the history that I feel like a lot of Chicanos and Mexicanos are not isolated into one box. There are many different indigenous peoples that still exist and that are still going strong and rematriating the land and taking care of our waters, taking care of our coasts, taking care of different aspects of our agriculture, and holding our politicians and our leaders accountable on both sides of the border. So it was really amazing and just a beautiful thing to be part of that and to learn from other master artists and muralists. And yeah, it was like honestly, it felt like almost surreal being able to be there with the time and space and um, just having the privilege to cross that border and do what I do best and, you know, put my best foot forward for everyone around me. So that was amazing.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad, like I said, that you were able to come in tonight and take some time. Like I tell all my guests, you could be doing anything, but you agreed to be here. So I truly appreciate you for being here. Make sure you guys love on our guest tonight. I took a small little hiatus too. I kind of been like off of line for a little bit, but you are my welcome back. You are the big shebang for being back online. So I really appreciate you. If you would like to, for right now, while we get people in and get the ball rolling, introduce yourself. Let the people know who you are, what you do, what you're about, what you stand for, just so that we can get a general context.
Ah, okay. Well, bonjour and then my maganadog anin que andan mi gente. My name is Jacqueline Salgado. I'm here in southern Texas, also known as San Antonio, and the land of Yanawana, of sacred waters. And I am a mixed indigenous person. My grandparents come from Mexico, from both Tlaxcala and Santa Ana in the Otomi and Tlaxcalteca territory. And my paternal side, they come from Michigan, the Sault Ste. Marie tribe, and also known as Chippewa or Anishinaabe people. So it's an honor to be in both bloodlines from the north and the south, and you know, to carry that. I'm a full-time artist and culture bearer. So what I do is mostly murals and multimedia art, multidisciplinary, I guess you could say, if you want to be fancy about it. And a lot of my work is just spiritually and culturally based. So I try to carry all of those sacred teachings and rematriate a lot of these spaces that do not hold space for most Chicanos or Mexicanos, as well as indigenous peoples, and just try to bring awareness and share my voice in the best ways that I know how. So it's really great. I love what I do. I also work with a nonprofit here in South Texas known as Ties to la Tierra, which is Spanglish for Ties to the Land. And we are an intertribal organization that works to help not only our communities and the mothers and children in our communities, but we also help with prescribed burns and other things like gathering of sacred medicines and sacred foods like mesquite and other harvesting. So it's great to carry on those other traditions and teach people in our community how to use sacred medicines and how to reconnect in ways that they're able and to show up in the best of our ability. So it's really great. I love what I do, and if if you'll have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I know it's like a mouthful of what I do, but sometimes if I'm not doing art, I do speak at different kinds of like conferences and rallies, and mostly I want to say white higher up spaces for people that have a lot of money, let's just say an influence on the land and the water, and being able to hold that space for indigenous peoples and advocate for our wildlife, advocate for our water, and adhering to our land and our water, not as a resource, but as our relatives, and just helping people shift that lens. So, yeah, that's a small summary of what I do.
Well, you do amazing. I'm really truly honored to have you here. I follow your work and what you do, and I'm like, wow,
Oh,
that's
thank
awesome. Like, I don't, heck yeah, I was just like, wow, this is really mainly what drove me to do Matriarchal Voices podcast. Was I feel like our women in our community, their voices and what they do and the work that they do is not highlighted. Like,
Yes.
people are not talking about how badass our women are. Like,
Yeah.
from everything from business to art to music, politics, like
Yeah.
literally our women are just in there, but it's not highlighted. So you and among all the other women that that I have interviewed are my driving goal of why I do what I do. And I just thank you so much for being here. You truly are an inspiration. So
Thank you so
I
much.
will, yes, I will dive into the questions.
Okay.
Um, this is more sort of like so towards like art and creativity, because you are a published artist. In case people didn't catch that, she is a published artist. How does your heritage shape your visual art or design work?
Uh, well, I think like for many indigenous creatives and artists, that has to stay the center of my work. And I just have to carry myself from a point of integrity. And part of that is adhering to the teachings that I was taught. And, you know, a lot of us have different rites of passage and different kinds of um, tribal affiliations, but for the most part, it's been really beautiful to have that process and being able to acknowledge that within my work, because a lot of people kind of, I guess, you know, they like to contextualize us into this little box and say that all natives are the same. We all have the same ideology. We all have the same sacred teachings, the same creation stories. And it's really, I think, a beautiful thing to show that in a visual sense, because sometimes you only have 1 to 3 seconds to catch somebody's attention. And so for my art, I try to do that on a visual aspect, is bring up those topics of conversation. Why does that color or that symbol carry so much? Why does this visual representation have a sense of duality? Why are women so revered? Why are different animals and like ecological aspects, you know, so important? And, you know, I feel like that really does open just a whole door, a whole like arena of questions and I want to say like conversation, which is really important because I feel like that's the first step, is curiosity, for people to be able to understand things, and actually give us a sense of, you know, like humanity again, instead of making us a monolith. Um, Once you're able to like humanize indigenous people and indigenous practices and understand that we are still here and that we still exist, then that's the first step in taking the next steps, which is how can I be part of advocacy? How can I be part of, you know, the bigger picture? How can I help? And what can I do within my limits to show up as my best self for not only my family, but everyone around me and everyone the next 7 generations after me. So it's really a great thing to use art because I feel like sometimes people just look at it and they're like, wow, that's really pretty. But on a deeper context, it's really great when people are able to recognize little things when you're connected, and then especially some of the people that have that inner knowing, what I like to call like that sense of uh, a little tug that you have that's for a reason, and a lot of us call that blood memory. So if you ever feel that tug, I just encourage you not to ignore it and to follow that through and just to see, what could be pulling you that way for a reason.
Absolutely. You had talked about how, or you mentioned how Indigenous people aren't a monolith, and we see that, with like Western society and just like living in people. People want to monolith all Indigenous people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like no, that's not how it goes, and I'm really glad that you touched on that. That's so important. And just like how how being an Indigenous woman affects your art, and just the little intricacies of it. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of tell, like, oh, okay, that is da da da, or that is from da 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 people. Like, and it's something that Indigenous people can tell right away. Like, so
Yeah,
I'm glad that you touched on that. Where do you find the ideas and stories for your pieces, or would that kind of like be intertwined with what you were saying?
I think it kind of depends on sometimes. Sometimes I have an invitation for certain calls for exhibitions where they have like a certain theme, or they have a certain like aspect that they want to touch base on. For me, if I have the ability to, use my creativity, I usually try and tap into what I'm going through, those little nudges that I get here and there, whether it be from like experiences or certain times when I feel like I'm going through like a hardship. I feel like it's for a reason, and I get a little bit excited because I know that that means I'm getting a little bit closer to something that's about to like manifest into more. So I really try and like put that on paper as best I can in a visual sense because I want people to see what I see whenever for example, like when I look at my grandmother, I don't just see an old woman with gray hair. I see, someone that has so much oral history and like just like matrilineal knowledge, and just an understanding of things that now as an adult that I understand better, but as a child she would tell me certain things or certain stories where they kind of didn't make too much sense to me. But now that I have some experience in the real world and like experience with certain spiritual and cultural aspects, like they do make sense to me now. And so I try and touch on that as best that I can within my work, whether it's with like certain line work or just like leaving little hints and sparks of like stitching or like traditional pottery line work. And I really try and get that in there as much as possible with the time limit that I have, because typically it depends on the artist's exhibition or call, but I'll have anywhere between 5 days to 2 months. So it really depends on how much time I'm given, but I try to like get as much detail in as possible. Um, and yeah, so that's something that I really love to do, is just the tediousness of it, bit by bit, and just maintaining that, and having that a little bit of, making sure that it's like scientifically accurate, but also it's also culturally accurate. I
Mm,
say so. Yeah.
that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you, or why do you prefer working with your specific materials or tools? Is there like a way? Because like we said earlier, indigenous people aren't a monolith, and not all indigenous people create the same art or use the same things. So do you prefer working with certain things or certain tools, or like is there a preferred method?
Yeah, so sometimes if I have to work with, like, let's say, for example, for wildlife, I really like to do my research and I touch base with nonprofit organizations or like Parks and Wildlife, and I'll go and do my own research on that certain species, the different kinds of things that they have to endure, things like migrational patterns and how climate is affecting them, things of how they've been revered now and in the past, and what are we doing as a state or on a federal level to assist them, things like that. And it's just a matter of knowing your subject before you want to pick up a paintbrush or you want to pick up a pen and sketch them. I feel like that's part of honoring it because a lot of people, they like to just, just do something pretty and then throw it on a wall. But for me, I feel like that's not maintaining the integrity of it. So I try my best to, fully take responsibility of whatever I'm doing art on. For example, I was recently working with this organization called Women for Wolves, and they're like a national organization here in the U.S. So if y'all want to check them out, they advocate for wolves and coyotes and foxes of different like species that are on the brink of being extinct or, on that hot list.
Wow.
And a lot of them are deeply affected here in the South, like Mexican red wolves and gray wolves, because we have a lot of disturbance with this wall that's at our border that is disturbing migratory patterns, not just for them, but for a lot of other species as well. And so when I had the opportunity to go to Mexico City for my artist residency, I made sure to go and visit this. It's basically a reserve for those kinds of wolves, foxes, and coyotes in Coyoacan, which is ironically, they call it that, the place of the wolves or the place of the coyotes there in Mexico.
Wow.
And so they really do their best to maintain those populations and rehabilitate those wolves or those coyotes that are struggling. And then they release them to the wild. So they are protected nationally in Mexico. And so before I wanted to do a piece on them, I wanted to make sure to go visit and speak with some of those scientists and speak with some of those organizations that advocate for them, like not only like on a physical level, but they're actually doing the work. And so it was just very interesting, and it was really great to see that people are doing the work. It's not just something like an Instagram post that looks really cool for likes, but it's also something that's really great. So, but yeah, so that's a little bit of my, I guess, my process is I like to really fully understand what I'm drawing or what I'm painting before I go into the nitty gritty of it. And that's just a matter of like a matter of respect, I think, like a nod and just showing them that I am trying my best to my ability to bring that. So yeah, that's just
So
a
you're
little bit.
like paying homage to something before you do it, right? Like just honoring that. That's beautiful. I really love that. And I think I think so I have a friend out in California. Yes, she's an artist, DRC. She's an artist. You guys need to follow each other. Jack, there is DRC in the comments. She's also an artist. Her her drawings, she does hyper what is it? DRC, can you put it? Hyper realism.
Ah, okay.
Yes, yes. You guys have to follow each other. That would be a beautiful collab. Um, but just I have a friend out in California. She was working with wolves. And I wonder if it's the same as what you're talking about, because she used to go to a like where they, what is it called, where they like save them? Not an encampment. It's I can't remember what it's called, but I wonder if it's the same thing as you're talking about. She used to work for that. Like not will work with the wolves. So that is really beautiful to hear. A conservation, yes, yes. Conservation. So my next questions are gonna be for like modeling and representation because you are a model. So for
Yeah.
people who don't know, she is a woman of many things. A sanctuary. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you,
Thank
Brandy.
you.
A sanctuary. It's a wolf sanctuary. Miss Jack is a jack of all trades, a master of all. Um, what is the hardest part about being an Indigenous woman in mainstream fashion or in fashion in general and in media? What do you think is some of the
I think
challenges?
I think for sure, right off the bat, is the European beauty standard that we have here in the States, and overall, like in our world. A lot of people don't see Indigenous beauty as the standard, but I think by having more of us in these spaces, that's slowly changing, and that's a great thing. It was definitely a challenge for me at first because when I first started out and I was taking gigs that were unfortunately unpaid, I would get comments like, well, you're pretty, but like, you're not New York Fashion Week pretty. Or, you're pretty, but you're not like going to be Met Gala pretty. Or, little things like that, that I didn't take to heart, but it did kind of sting a little bit. So I took it with a grain of salt, but it just motivated me all the more to represent other brown women of color and other women that look like me because I think it's really important to show that um, there are different ways to be beautiful, both inside and out. And a lot of us have more than just a superficial that we carry generations of women and just history within our bloodline that is still existing today. So I think it's just a beautiful thing to be able to exist in these spaces and show up as my best self because as a young girl, I I will admit there were times where I was just like, man, I wish I had lighter skin. I wish I had blonde hair, but the older I got, the more I embraced who I was, and I think that's when things started to finally flourish for me and different doors started to open, which is really great. But, there have been like random opportunities out of the blue that have just shown up for me or like fallen right into my lap just because I decided to show up as myself. And I think that's kind of the best kinds of opportunities, to be honest. So when I do have the chance to be on a runway or do a photo shoot, I always make sure to center myself and, not to react in any sort of way with people who have that kind of a mindset of the Eurocentric beauty standard. And in a way, just kind of help them see things from a different perspective. Because, like I said, that's always the first step. You can't control others, but you can control yourself and how you react. So that's what I try to do. And I try to, make sure that I hold respect for myself and that I remind others that I represent more than myself. I represent my community. I represent both of, sides of my lineage. So, yeah, I try and honor that.
That's beautiful. Well, you do an amazing job. So you're not
Thank
trying,
you.
you're doing. Um, how do you make sure that while you're doing, whether it's photo shoots or if it's runway, whatever it may be, how do you make sure that your culture is respected and not copied or homogenized?
That's a really great question. I think for the most part, I'll give an example of a time where I had to hold a hard boundary. There was a time where I had a photographer who is well renowned, mind you, worked with Texas Minority Fashion Week, had been like in the Times before, worked with these big brands, like L'Oreal and all these other crazy big name brands. And he asked me like, "Hey, would you be up for doing something like this?" And he sent me kind of like a mood board of like Mexican indigenous, but with feathers. And they were not, I don't want to say quetzal feathers, but they look like they were dyed turkey feathers. And I had to halt that right there. And I had to let him know, like, I'm so sorry, but that looks like it's Burapecha. I do not derive from that tribe, and I am not going to speak for someone that is not of, that I'm not of. And I also don't feel comfortable being associated like that. So I had to hold that boundary. And then when I showed up to the actual photo shoot itself, he was very pushy on asking if I could do photos in my regalia. And I told him that I apologized, but one of my boundaries is that I don't do that unless it's with a indigenous photographer because only they can carry that understanding and respect. Um, Unfortunately, there are people who will try and I guess you could say tokenize indigenous women or indigenous peoples when it
Mhm.
comes to modeling or when it comes to different things like being on a cover or being on an Instagram post, and they're just like, "Oh my God, I finally shot a real Indian" or something like that, and
Mhm.
it's a little bit disturbing. So there were times where I had to let him know, like, "Hey, like, I appreciate you bringing all this turquoise and this cowboy hat and all this other stuff, but I have my own jewelry, I have my own beadwork, I have my own, stuff that I can wear that best represent me, and that's what I'm gonna wear." And in one instance, I held my ground, and I think it's probably my profile picture on here, but I decided to just wear my feathers and wear no jewelry, no makeup, like I guess very minimal makeup, because he wanted me to put on war paint. He wanted me to put on like beadwork, heavy regalia over this really fancy dress, and I was just like, nope, you know what? I'm just gonna be me, and I'm gonna wear my feathers, which were my hawk feathers, which was my first pair of feathers I was ever gifted, so they were very significant to me.
Oh.
And I wore my hair down instead of braiding it. And for us, having your hair down is like a sense of humility. It's not going into a space with a fighting spirit. And so that was my way of showing up as my best self and showing up to honor my matrilineal lineage and also just holding my ground in a sense, but in the best way. So I think that kind of flustered him a little bit, but it also turned out to be like one of the best photo shoots ever. So it kind of worked out, but needless to say, I'm sure there are a lot of other instances that other indigenous models and people have gone through in similar instances. But yeah, I tried my best.
Well, you did a great job. There's something I've noticed, like even maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think like we as Indigenous people, as just like ethnic people in general, like we need to stop being so open to allowing non-POC people into our spaces and learning from us because they want to do it. You know how they'll be like, oh my gosh, look at them weave. Or can you show me how to do this or that? It was said it earlier today and it made so much sense. They kind of look at us like we're just this like ancient, like we're what's the word? Not primordial, like primitive. I'm sorry. They feel like we're like these primitive people and they're like, "Oh, look, they're still doing this." And they want to just kind of like put us on this thing like showcase us like if we're just this primitive culture, these primitive people, and that's not it. And
Yeah.
they want to just display us like if we're objects, and it's so disrespectful. It is like beyond disrespectful. So I'm really glad that you stood your ground. I'm glad that you didn't play into it because there have been people that unfortunately maybe they're just like, well, if I don't do this, my career won't take off, or if I don't do this, whatever, what have you, and not doing it from a bad place with bad intention, more so like, man, this could probably be the stop to my dream. So they kind of allowed it. So I'm really proud of you. Thank you for standing your ground, and thank you for not letting people just homogenize you and display you like you're just this thing to be displayed. I don't even know the words to say. So I'm really proud of you. Thank you for that. When do you feel most powerful or seen when you're in front of a camera?
I want to say when I'm in my element, I oftentimes have to be presentable. I guess you could say business savvy when I have to sit down for a big mural project and I have to speak with city representatives or people that are funding the project. I have to sit down with sometimes even a board of people who want to approve ideas and things like that. And so I try to show up, whether it's in like a long skirt and my beaded earrings, or I show up wearing my huaraches, or, like one of my little faldas, just things that are like represent me and my culture. It really depends on the kind of, I guess you could say the vibe. But I love being in my element, and I think sometimes when I do feel most powerful is without the makeup and without the fancy dresses or whatever they want to put me in for runway, and when I'm just painting a wall or when I'm just sweaty outside and like helping like plant with a community garden, or when I'm doing like those prescribed burns on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. you know, that's usually when I feel my most powerful. Helping others and showing up as my best self or teaching others how to do something that I've mastered so that they can, show up as their best selves. That's something that I really love to do, is just like helping other people grow and helping other indigenous peoples like understand things like that. Especially when it comes to land rights and water advocacy, like prescribed burns really do help with things like that, because here in Texas we have so much dry land and climate. And so, excuse me. So we're doing a lot of work with ranchers and teaching them how to rotate their grazing and shift on different parts, and how they can utilize that to rematriate their soil and assist them with preventing wildfires, which is awesome because, wildfires are pretty abundant this year, all over the states and even in Canada, as we've seen recently. So prayers to our relatives up there. But, I think something that is really important is just assisting our community in the ways that we can. And so doing that through Indigenous knowledge and teachings, which is through prescribed burns. And we can also prevent that with, prescribed burns also helps with some of the flooding that we have here in Texas, because some of us, we have a lot of hill country that exposes our land to a lot of flash floods. So with that prescribed burn, you eliminate all of that brush or debris that could otherwise harm you or your livestock or even your home. So yeah, those are times when I feel the most powerful, I guess, is whenever I'm able to use those gifts or that knowledge, and help others with it. So
That's powerful. Shout out to Texas. I'm a Texas girl, a Tejana through and through.
yeah, same here.
uh, yes, so I definitely get what you're saying. If if you can tell yourself anything, so little you, what would you tell little Jack looking back at her now?
I think I would let her know that things are not going to be easy, but that's how you know that things are going to work in your favor. Because
Mm.
sometimes when you have a upbringing and you are in a educational system or in just I guess like a patriarchal system where a lot
Mm.
of people have a head start ahead of you just for the color of their skin, for where they live or how much money that they have. sometimes you don't understand the wealth of growing up with nothing. And I think that speaks volumes is helping myself understand that at a younger age, that that is probably the most powerful thing, is the wealth of growing up with nothing.
Mm.
And I think that's something that not everyone has the capability to understand. And for those of you that are able to understand, then props to you. And it just gives you a deeper appreciation for things and a deeper appreciation for growth and being able to help your family and your community and just helping even yourself to be a good relative and to be a good ancestor, because I make sure that I go to the gym as often as I can so that I can, be that old grandma that's still kicking when I'm 100 something years old and planting my garden and making sure that I can pass down a lot of great stories and a lot of great things that I think some of us didn't get to experience with our parents or our grandparents because they were so busy working. So it's a beautiful thing to be able to excel in what I'm good at and also assist my family and my community doing it. So um, I would just tell my younger self, yeah, just be okay with who you are and embrace it and try to understand the wealth of growing up with nothing.
Mm. That's powerful. Thank you. So that kind of like leans into my next question. And my next question is, what advice would you give young Indigenous creators who want to follow your path or similar
Mm.
paths?
I think I would first say that if you have a sense of calling or like a tug towards something that you feel afraid to pursue, then that's all the more reason to do it, because there's never going to be a right time. And I had to learn this the hard way, is there's never going to be a right time. We are all given the same 24 hours in a day. And I know, I understand, a lot of us are mothers, a lot of us are culture bearers, a lot of us are caretakers, and we have a lot of sleep debt. We're always tired, but it's a matter of how tired do you want to be? Sometimes I have to tell myself I would rather be tired and know that I fulfilled my needs within the first 4 hours of the day, and then I took charge of the rest of my day. Or, like if I'm able to pursue something and, even be like twice as tired, but I know that, hey, I'm going to have those, 5 hours of sleep and get up and do it all over again, then I'm more grateful for that than, just being the average tired, if that makes sense. I don't know if that
That
made
makes
it
a lot of
sense.
sense.
But yeah, I'd rather be tired and know that I fulfilled my calling and fulfilled my goals. So that's why I'm usually up before everybody, and I fill that first 4 hours of my day with what I need to do for myself. That way I can show up as my best self for everyone around me. And that way I don't carry out through the rest of my day, ruining the color of my day or like feeling stress and feeling anxiety. So it makes a big difference in how you show up for yourself. Because a lot of people say you can't pour from an empty cup, but it also speaks on, maintaining that boundary for yourself and giving that same love to yourself instead of giving from an empty cup. So, yeah.
Wow. Shout out to Leslie. I've never got that gift ever. So thank you so much for blessing the live. Um, I have never heard somebody reference the first 4 hours of their like waking up, like the first 4 hours of the day. Um, somebody sent you that song.
Aw.
um, so I'm gonna take that with me. Like,
Yeah.
wow, I'm gonna apply that too. That's important and that makes so much sense.
Mhm.
Like, cause that sets the tone and technically like. we're supposed to be greeting creator with the sun. But
Yes, literally.
that's like if we want to, for those who don't know,
Yeah.
but it like sets the tone for the day. So thank you, Daisy. Um, Shout out to Leslie. Let's get her some stickers in the chat. That was an amazing gift. Shout out to all the gifters. Um, that Man, that's the best piece of advice I've heard recently. So thank you so much. It makes a lot of sense. I hope you guys take that away too. Leslie says, "Me too. The first 4 hours is powerful." Man, you guys are teaching me things. Thank you. Um, what is a dream project that you want to create, or maybe a brand that you would want to work with, or something like that that you want to do next?
I think a dream project would be to do a mural somewhere in Mexico with one of the big artists down there and learn from them. I recently got in touch with my friend Maria, and she is quite literally a legend over there. And I didn't get the opportunity to work with her this time because we just quite literally ran out of time before I had to come back to the States. But I think one of my dream jobs would be doing a really big building over there in a neighborhood that one of my grandparents used to live in, or some of my family still lives in, and just be able to spark that little bit of fire in a child walking by. That's how I knew I wanted to be a muralist, was by seeing this giant mural on this hospital downtown called Santa Rosa in San Antonio, Texas. And every time we'd pass by there, I would be like, man, I want to paint something that big one day.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think that's probably something that I'd want to do, is just something on that big of a scale, but instead of Catholic references, it would be indigenous references, and just give that little bit of a spark to some little brown girl somewhere out there.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
I love that. I love that you reference like brown girls from one
Yeah.
brown girl to another brown girl. Like, girl, just growing up, it's like you said earlier, you had mentioned like mainstream media and just kind of like that Eurocentric way of not only thinking but looking, and that kind of like that standard they set for the beauty standards. Any of us morenitas or any of us brown skinned girls, like we struggled with that growing up. You know what I mean? And even like my daughter, my eldest daughter, she's a little bit more tanner than me, which I think she's beautiful. Like I'm just like, girl, you are just so beautiful. Like creator really really blessed you. But when she was younger, she came home and she's like, "Mom, why do I have to have such brown skin? Why do I have I was like, "First of all, let me stop you right there. Like, you're beautiful." And then I showed her a bunch of indigenous models and artists, and I'm like, "You're beautiful just the way that you are." And we had to speak life into our little brown girls,
Yes.
because
Agreed.
society is not going to do it. Society is definitely not going to do it. So we have to make sure that we're doing that. Which leans into one of my last questions. What does it mean to you to be Chicana and also to be Ojibwe or Anishinaabe? What does that mean for you? How close do you hold that to your heart, and does that affect you in any way?
Oh yeah, it affects me a lot. I mean, I guess on a service level, I've been stopped by ICE a few times already, and that's just getting materials at Home Depot to go do a mural. And also, it's a big responsibility as a first generation Chicana, because my mother and my grandparents all did not speak English first, so I think that's why they had such a hard time trying to teach me Spanish and just like helping me embrace that, because they didn't want me to have that same struggle and that same, um, I guess, like experience that they had, which was, I mean, not to the same degree, but as a darker skinned child, I definitely had a different experience than my white counterparts. But I can definitely say that like it's a huge responsibility because I feel like I have to honor what my grandparents and my mother went through in order to be where I'm at now. And so um I cannot let that be bypassed by being lazy or by not showing up as my best self. So I always, have to give myself grace at times because there's sometimes where I will push myself until I have no energy left. So learning how to rest was a big thing for me. But as a Chicana and like as a Anishinaabe, as an Ojibwe woman, like it's a big deal to be in these spaces because a lot of them are full of artists who have BFAs and MFAs and have gone to all these crazy experiences across the world. And then I'm just this brown person who loves to paint and I love to, and I just love to be, and I love to advocate and do for my community. So sometimes I do get a lot of side eyes and I do get a lot of like pushback, but that's okay. And I still hold space for people. And I hope that, that they can have that perspective shifted a little bit once they get to know me a bit better. But for the most part, it's just a matter of maintaining that integrity and that, once people can see a lot of my art, then they can understand it better. Daisy, she says, "What's your zodiac sign?" Don't hate me. I'm a solstice baby. I was born on December 21st, so I'm technically a Sagittarius, but I'm also a 13th moon. So, for the Ojibwe, it's called the little spirit moon.
Hey.
So, it's a little bit of spicy in there, but yeah. I have my moments. Don't get it twisted, but your girl gets hangry sometimes. But yeah, I love to
My
show.
partner is a Sag, okay? Like
Yes.
they would think that water and fire don't mix. We actually mix quite well. Don't get
Oh
me
my
wrong,
God.
when it's heated, it gets heated.
Yes.
But I love my Sagittarius. Is like I got a special place in my heart for y'all. There you go. Yeah, Metzley said it. We love our Sag women. Yeah, don't get it twisted. So this is part of the interview where I bring somebody up from the audience to ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
And where I don't know if my twin is there. No, she left. Okay. So if you guys can come up, that would be great. Or if you'd like to come up, if you have the time to come up. Um, I want to say thank you for you doing what you're doing and everything that you do. Continue inspiring, continue being a role model, even though you are not setting out to be a role model. That's what you're doing. Um, I haven't asked you your age, but I feel like I'm older than you, but I still look up to you. And even people who are older can still learn from the younger generation. We should always be learning. So shout out to you, Jack, for doing that. Welcome in, Sahida. Welcome in, Daisy. Would you guys like care to ask Jack something?
Mira, cuando hablo primero, I feel like I'm over talking. Y cuando no, nadie se unmute. Primero que nada, mucho gusto, Jack. Me dio mucho gusto escuchar tu historia y conocer un poquito más de ti. Um, my question, or more of I guess a statement and a question. Me dolió cuando dijiste los comentarios que te estaban diciendo de que you were not New York, Fashion Week material. And that just speaks to this whole concept of their idea of what the beauty standard is.
Yes.
Que ellos mismos no pueden tener. They can't even meet their own beauty standards. They don't stay blonde when they get older. Okay? They can't stay, small and petite and not they don't like mira, no les gusta como son. That's what I'm gonna say. Okay, they still tan. They're not embracing their pale beauty. They
Yeah.
still tan. They put, Botox and things on their lips too. They get extensions. Okay, I used to do makeup for all people, and ni siquiera ellas mismas pueden meet the standard. But I would say my question would be, and sorry if you answered this already, but what was your biggest inspiration when it comes to your art? Like what makes you be like, oh, I gotta do something.
Oh my gosh. I think recently, I'll go off of a recent experience. So, as many of you know, Ciudad Mexico used to be Tenochtitlan, which is a severely spiritually saturated space. And so, visiting a lot of those historical sites and even just being within the same vicinity as a lot of those artifacts, girl, I was going a bit like crazy, which is why I always have obsidian on me because it helps me to ground myself and not feel like overstimulated with a lot of spirits or other things that could be within the room that I could be seeing or feeling or even smelling at times. So something that really inspired me was being able to see traditional Otomi and traditional Tlaxcaltec disfraces and like faldas and a lot of other beautiful stitching and pottery work. And so I tried to incorporate that into a lot of things that, go into my artwork recently. I don't know if any of you follow my Instagram, but my most recent piece was of my aboy because she is of those Otomi people, and my grandfather is Tlaxcaltec. So it's just something that I tried to incorporate in that piece with the stitching, the line work, down to the ecological aspects, and even the floral work that's in that piece. So if you want to check it out, it's a lot of black and white, like fine line work, but I tried to incorporate that as best as I could. And if y'all know the symbolism, then you know. I'll let y'all do the research and be a little bit inspired by that. But yeah, so that's something that I guess really inspired me recently was seeing a lot of those artifacts and just those traditional clothing and pottery work. So it was really beautiful.
Oh, they want to know what your IG handle is. Is it in your bio? Can they find it through your
It should
bio?
be in my bio, but it's bluemoonart.satx.
Okay, I am ready for my
Oh.
question if you're ready.
Y quería decirle algo a Daisy, espérame nada más rapidín. No, nada más le quería decir que me llamó la atención eso de que dices que puedes sentir cosas, porque creo que eso es parte de nuestros gifts que nos tocaron. I do feel like some places are extremely spiritually heavy, as you said. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, Daisy. Sorry, you guys know my brain's scattered today.
You're good. So, given the climate that we're in, right? And in this country and everything that us brown people are facing, those of us with, you know, that show that we are visibly native, right? That we are being hunted in this country. How do you think that has recently affected your artwork? Like, do you think that that has put motivated you in any sense to to represent or like I don't know if I'm making sense, like that
Yes,
pain that our people feel.
absolutely. Well, as I said earlier before, I don't know if some of you have heard me, but I have been stopped by ICE on several occasions just picking up paint at Home Depot. Been stopped at the front and asked for proof of purchase. Got to my car and then had them like search my car, look in my wallet for proof of residency, proof of that I'm an American citizen, and a lot of other things like that too. I think my way of getting back at that was by furthering my artwork. So recently I was invited to or I was actually asked to commission a work of a folklorico dance group in Washington, D.C. And so I did a giant canvas that will be acting as a mural behind a performance at the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery, and it will be displayed on Dia de los Muertos. And this is, I guess, my act of resistance and my act of advocacy for our people. And it's really exciting, especially in this political climate, because I feel like it's honoring not only our culture, but our history and our rich heritage as Chicanos and as Mexicanos, and to be displayed in one of the biggest museums, quite literally, in this country before I even got to visit is a big deal to me. So that's like one of the things that I think is um, my form of resistance and my form of advocating for my people, and just allowing that space for us to exist and to show this country and all these hateful hearts just how truly beautiful our heritage is. Um, and I feel like that's the only way to combat that is by allowing them to see the beauty of us and the beauty of our customs and our history. So it's just one of those things that I've really taken to heart, and I did my absolute best. That is also on my Instagram. So if y'all want to see the process video of me going crazy on that little canvas, well, it's not little. I say little in front of everything, but most of the stuff I do is really huge. So if y'all want to check that out, go ahead. But yeah, I'm also working on other advocacy work for families to do fundraising for some of those that need assistance with legal stability for a lot of these families that have been arrested by ICE or are facing hardship with ICE. So keep an eye out for that. I will be selling like totes and t-shirts and prints and things like that in support of a lot of these families in my community. And yeah, so thank you for that question. It was like,
Can I ask one more if you don't mind? If you don't mind. So my next question would be, if there was one thing that you could say out there for any brown or indigenous person to hear, what would it be? Like something encouraging, or just if you could say one thing that you would love people across to hear, what would it be?
I guess something I could say for a lot of relatives across Turtle Island, whether you be Mexicano or, South American, Central American, Indigenous, Native American, I just want to encourage you not to dim your light, because a lot of times people will see that you are carrying literal centuries of blood memory and of sacred teachings, and they have no other way to combat that other than calling it evil or calling it demonic or calling it other horrible things. And I just want to encourage you to show up as yourself and don't let that deter you from these spaces, and to allow yourself to take up space, because as a woman and as a as a woman that has always been excluded in a lot of these spaces, I make it a point to, when I actually get into a door, that I include a lot of my counterparts, a lot of my other Chicanas, a lot of my other Indigenous women, a lot of my Indigenous youth, and allowing them into those spaces as well, because I feel like if I am not doing for, the generations after me, then what was the point? So I encourage y'all to just acknowledge that your your ancestors, 7 generations behind you, walk into every room that you are in. And so take that how you will, but whenever you feel intimidated, just know that they're walking with you and that they're watching over you. So
Period. Thank you, Saji. Thank you, Daisy, for coming up. I appreciate you guys. Um, Jack, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you up here to listen to you. You, like I said, you are inspiring. Keep doing what you're doing. I would like to catch up with you, like maybe in
Yeah,
like 6 months or something. With the women that I interview, I always tell them, like in 6 months, I want to see where you're at. I want to get an update. What are you doing? If there's anything new that you're working on, I would really appreciate it. And like I said, it's my honor to have you here and just to be able to talk to you. You're an inspiration. You have such knowledge like a young elder. I don't know if anybody's told you that before, but you like little young Yoda.
yeah.
I love it. I really truly appreciate you for being here. I'm not sure if I follow you on Instagram, but I'm going to today. So if y'all do not follow Jack here on TikTok and across all the social media platforms that she has, make sure you guys tap in with her. Amazing, amazing sister, amazing artist. Follow her work, follow her, share out her content. This is what Matriarchal Voices is for. This podcast, this space is specifically to empower Black, Brown, and Indigenous women. We have to get our voices out there. And why not do it? Like Jack said, why not hold the door open for the next one? There's none of that haterade over here. We don't do that over here. We are healed over here.
Yeah.
We are in touch with our ancestors over here, and it's all love. It's nothing but love over here. Thank you so much, Jack. So before we leave, is there anything that people can know about you? Just one random thing that you would say.
My favorite tortillas are tortillas de nopal.
Oh, man!
I know a lot of people say corn or flour, but that's my favorite. Take it or leave it.
Hey.
Hey.
Oh, that is wild. Okay, y'all. So y'all don't come for me. I've never had tortillas en nopal.
You have to try
Never.
it then.
I'm gonna have to try it. My favorite tortillas, since we're talking about them, is purple corn tortillas.
Yes.
Jeez,
We're
so
good.
good, so good. So with that being said, I thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you for just loving on our guests. Jack, come back. I will see you in like 6 to 7 months. Let's get an update.
Right.
Yes, continue being the chingona that you are. Continue being the amazing relative that you are. You are doing such amazing things. I will see you guys later. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.